In 2016, researchers at University College London ran a deceptively simple experiment. Volunteers sat at a computer flipping over virtual rocks. Some rocks hid snakes. If you found a snake, you got a mild electric shock to the hand. Nothing extreme, just enough to make your body care. The researchers tracked stress continuously: sweat, pupils, self-reports, the whole thing. And they found something strange. The people under the most stress were not the people guaranteed to get shocked. A certain shock produced less stress than a 50-50 chance of a shock. The worst state for the human nervous system was uncertainty, not certain pain, possible pain. That matters because most of us think anxiety comes from bad outcomes, but a huge amount of anxiety actually comes from unresolved outcomes, the waiting, the maybe. You already know this feeling. Waiting for medical results is often worse than getting the results. An unread message from your boss at 9 p.m. can ruin an entire night, even if the message turns out to be completely harmless. The week before layoffs are announced is often more stressful than the announcement itself. The event hurts, but the uncertainty spreads the hurt across time. So here's the core idea. Your brain experiences uncertainty as a threat, which makes you chase certainty for relief. But the chase itself is what keeps the anxiety loop alive. The skill that changes this is not perfect control, it's tolerance. Why would the brain react to a question mark like danger? Because your brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. Its job is to guess what happens next so it can prepare your body for it. If the future looks clear, your system settles down. If the future turns foggy, the brain can't resolve the situation. It can't close the file. So the alarm keeps ringing. Certain bad news can be processed. You adapt, you grieve, you respond. But uncertain news stays active because your brain treats unresolved possibilities like unfinished threats. The nervous system keeps checking for updates because, from its perspective, the danger has not fully passed yet. And this is where people accidentally train the problem. When uncertainty starts hurting, we scratch the itch. We refresh the inbox again. We reread the text for tone. We Google symptoms at midnight. We ask, are we okay? Even after getting reassurance. We build giant contingency plans for situations that haven't happened. And to be fair, these behaviors work for a moment. That's why they're so hard to stop. You check your phone and your anxiety drops slightly. You get reassurance and your chest loosens for 10 seconds. You make a detailed plan and suddenly things feel more manageable. Relief arrives. But relief is the trap. The brain learns through consequences. If a behavior reduces anxiety briefly but creates the urge to repeat itself later, it's probably functioning as a scratch. And that leads to the uncomfortable conclusion underneath all of this. If your emotional stability depends on eliminating uncertainty, you'll never arrive. Life keeps generating maybes. Relationships, health, work, money, all of it. So recovery cannot mean becoming certain. It means becoming better at remaining uncertain without compulsively trying to escape it. That's the real shift. Not certainty, tolerance. And next, we'll look at what happens to people who never build that tolerance, and the strange group of people who seem almost untouched by the itch. In the 1990s, researchers studying anxiety found something surprisingly simple underneath a lot of overthinking. They called it intolerance of uncertainty. Basically, how uncomfortable your mind gets when it cannot fully know what's coming next. Some people can hold a maybe without much friction. Other people experience maybe like an alarm bell. Their brain starts treating uncertainty itself as the danger. That's the person carrying an umbrella, a helmet, and 6 backup times on a completely sunny day. Not because they're irrational, because their nervous system is trying to create safety before anything bad can happen. And once that system switches on, the thought factory starts running. What if this goes wrong? What if I missed something? What if there's another possibility I haven't prepared for yet? The important part is that worry feels productive. It feels responsible, like mental labor. You're running simulations, checking branches, rehearsing outcomes. But here's the paradox researchers kept seeing. People who desperately seek certainty do not end up feeling more certain. They end up producing more worry. because some problems do not contain a final guarantee. You cannot think your way to absolute certainty about your health, your career, your relationships, or the future of the economy. So if your brain's rule is, do not relax until certainty arrives, the process never completes. Planning has stopping points. You send the email, you save the money, you book the appointment. Worry usually ends with another question. That's why certainty seeking becomes a treadmill. The fog stays where it is, the simulations multiply. Now here's the interesting part. Researchers later ran giant forecasting tournaments. Thousands of people tried predicting elections, wars, markets, global events. A tiny group consistently outperformed almost everyone else, including experts with access to classified information. And the weird thing about these top forecasters was not confidence, it was comfort with uncertainty. They did not need the fog to disappear before functioning. They used 3 habits that are completely learnable. First, they refused binary thinking. Most people ask questions like, will this happen? Yes or no? Safe or doomed? Success or failure? But reality usually does not hand you clean verdicts early, so the question keeps spinning in your head like a coin at 3 in the morning. Forecasters asked a different question. How likely is it? That changes everything. A spinning coin gives you nothing to hold. A probability gives you grip. Will I lose my job? Can loop forever. Given the signals I can actually see, maybe there's a 15% chance this year, and here's what would change my estimate, is workable. You can think with it instead of getting hypnotized by it. Second, they updated gradually. Most anxious thinking works like this. One new email, one weird symptom, one awkward conversation, and suddenly the entire future feels catastrophic. Forecasters did something calmer. New evidence nudged the dial a few points. 30% became 35, not 0 to apocalypse. Small evidence, small adjustment. That stability matters because uncertainty becomes easier to carry when every new signal doesn't detonate your worldview. And third, they treated "I don't know yet" as a legitimate answer. Not failure, not weakness, an answer. That's a huge shift because the goal stops being certainty and starts becoming calibration. You stop demanding a prophecy and start building a reasonable estimate. And for the part uncertainty can never solve completely, there's one more move. Stop trying to perfectly predict the storm and build a life that bends instead of breaks. A cash buffer changes how terrifying uncertainty feels. A second skill creates options. Relationships outside your workplace reduce dependence on one outcome. A plan B lowers the emotional cost of being wrong. The oak tries to resist every gust and eventually cracks. The reed bends and survives. That's the deeper reframe here. The answer to uncertainty is not endless prediction. It's tolerance, probabilities, and resilience. Same fog, different grip. So the upgrade is simple. Tolerance over certainty, probabilities over coin flips, buffers over prophecies. And once those habits start becoming automatic, uncertainty stops feeling like a cliff edge and starts feeling like weather. Tolerance for uncertainty is not a personality trait, it's a trained capacity. Most people think calm people were born calm, but usually they've just spent more time carrying unresolved situations without treating them like emergencies. That's the whole idea behind the uncertainty gym. The question marks are the weights. Uncertainty is the resistance. Your brain learns through repetition. If every uncomfortable unknown gets immediately solved with checking, Googling, reassurance, or overthinking, your nervous system starts linking uncertainty with danger. You reread the email 5 times, you refresh your messages, you replay the conversation in the shower. You tell yourself you're being careful, but your brain is learning a deeper lesson. Unresolved means unsafe. These drills train the opposite lesson. Drill 1 is micro exposures, small, deliberate encounters with uncertainty, progressive overload, like a gym. You start tiny because the goal is repetition, not bravery theater. Build a ladder with 10 rungs. Bottom rungs should feel almost silly. Send an email without rereading it. Order the dish you can't picture. Leave your phone at home for one short walk. Middle rungs get more social and uncomfortable. Give your opinion before checking the room's opinion. Delegate something and don't monitor it every 10 minutes. Higher rungs are real decisions made with incomplete information, maybe 80% of the information you wish you had. One rung per day. That's enough. The point is not the email or the restaurant. The point is teaching your alarm system that uncertainty can exist without catastrophe following behind it. Drill 2 is the worry sort. Most people treat every worry like it deserves immediate access to attention. This drill creates a border checkpoint. Every worry gets one stamp, real and now or hypothetical. If there's a concrete action you can take today, it stops being a worry and becomes a task. Make the call, send the form, book the appointment. But if it's a what if with no available move, it goes into the drawer. The drawer opens once a day for 15 minutes, your official worry window. This sounds ridiculous until you try it. Then you notice something strange. A lot of worries expire before their appointment. The urgency was emotional, not factual. You're not suppressing worry. You're removing its all-day access pass. Drill 3. Kill the coin, use the dial. Anxiety asks impossible yes or no questions. Did I ruin everything? Will this fail? Am I safe? A coin demands certainty. A dial allows estimates. Take the question spinning in your head tonight and rewrite it as a percentage. Then list 3 observable pieces of evidence that would move the percentage up or down. The number will probably be wrong. That's fine. The goal is not prediction. The goal is stopping the spin. Dread lives in the endless flipping, not in the number itself. Drill 4 is build the read. Your nervous system often reacts more to stakes than odds. A tiny risk feels enormous if the consequences seem survivable only through perfect control. So build buffers, a savings cushion, a second skill beyond your current job, a one-page plan B. Buffers don't predict the future, they lower the cost of uncertainty. The goal is flexibility under pressure, not rigid control. Drill 5 is the certainty audit. Once a day, catch yourself reaching for reassurance, refreshing the inbox, checking the symptoms again, asking someone, are you sure it's okay? Insert 10 minutes between the urge and the action. Just 10. Most urges weaken if they aren't fed immediately. Every time the urge fades on its own, your brain learns something important. An urge is not an emergency. All 5 drills work together. Exposures train the body. Worry sorting trains attention. The dial trains thinking. Buffers train resilience. Audits train impulse control. The fog is not going away. That was never the promise. The goal is different, to stop treating uncertainty like a constant emergency and start walking into it with a trained grip. This is Ideas to DNA, where knowledge becomes action.